Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to Crypto Talk with Brianna and Scott. I am Scott today, and this is Brianna. Hi, Brianna. How you doing?
Hey Scott, I'm good. I like that new little jingle at the beginning. That's very
Yeah,
wintry.
very
It's
wintry. Little,
wintry without being Christmassy. I like it.
I know, and I use a great company called actually, this I have two places where I can get music from, like royalty free. One is Epidemic Sound, and then this one I got from Film Pack, where it does video clips and music, and it's all royalty free, which is cool. And so I just put in holiday music and found a couple that I liked there. Hadn't actually listened to that whole through, so it was nice and, like you said, wintry but not Christmassy, which is cool.
Very nice.
Yeah. So today I have my this is my Stanley Starbucks. Let's see if you can see this. Oh, video. Oh, you can't quite see it, but it's a Starbucks branded mug, but they branded it with Stanley, and they have two of these. This lasts like 8 hours, hot liquid for 8 hours, and so I have my perfect my Americano in here. These mugs or these coffee, I read on some board somewhere that the Stanley version of these cups, and they make them in different kinds. There's one with a straw apparently, is the new corporate go-to have that everybody in corporate had to have this Stanley type of branded cup, I guess, or you weren't cool. And so I feel privileged to actually have one. And if y'all want one, you should go get one at Starbucks.
Hey, if it
Uh,
functions right, there's nothing better than a good functioning mug like that because it does make a big difference. I'm all about the Yetis. I like the Yetis.
yeah, I have
And
a couple of Yetis that are awesome too, and
uh-huh.
they're but it's interesting. So I spend so much time at Starbucks that and I use the Starbucks app for everything, and I get thousands of points. And I realized that you can trade your points in for your mugs. So it's like I have probably 10 of them, and that's what don't tell anybody, but that's what everyone's getting for Christmas this year.
Nice. Nice. Way to work it. Way to work the system.
Work the system. Yeah. So how was your week? How are we doing? Now we're kind of, I don't know, it feels like the dead of winter, even though I guess it's not here in Montana. But so how you doing? How you feeling? How you feeling about crypto and everything?
I'm great. Okay. In my life right now, I'm sitting in a winter wonderland. We had, I think, 12 inches in like a 24-hour span. So it was like a full
Oh wow.
snow day for my kids, went sledding, did all of that, going to a little like
Okay.
winter festival later. Super into the holidays this year.
Oh good.
Um, as
Nice.
far as crypto goes, let's shift to the crypto world. Wow, I think we're kind of getting over that panic after the crisis. And there was all of that. I mean, there was just people after blood, right? I mean, it was like,
Um,
whoa, we have nobody really knows what's going on with Sam Bankman-Fried. It's like, what is going on here? He's was in the Bahamas. People were saying he was maybe fleeing for a while, but no, he's still in the Bahamas. And then he's being interviewed on Good Morning America. And then he was on that New York Times interview as well. And still, it's kind of like, okay, what's going on over there? I don't know. A lot of questions. And then we have like BitBoy freaking out, totally freaking out. I don't know if you've been watching any of that. I stopped watching it. At first, I was like, yeah, like, way to go, BitBoy, going after it. And then I was like, whoa, this is going too far. And I was just like, man, this is just creating a lot of war. And, it's all, now I'm kind of more focused on like, where do we go from here and what's going to happen? And so that's kind of where I've been placing my attention. What are the headlines saying in the mainstream? What are the headlines saying in the crypto world? And then like, what's going to happen to these centralized exchanges? And I think we're kind of getting through the panic that those are all just going to crumble. Because I was kind of in a state of mind where I'm like, whoa, like everything might go down, like, and it kind of is what happens. So yeah, there's a lot going on. I'm also just gauging what's kind of my feeling and what's like the overall feeling during these crisis modes, because we know there's going to be more to come, like maybe not right now, but in the future. I know we kind of talked about that yesterday in that call that we had in our community, Scott.
yeah.
These things will happen in time. And so it's like, kind of taking note of like how do people react, and like so that we were making sure we're in position and not getting in too much of a fear based outlook to where we are paralyzed and don't move. I guess that's kind of where I'm at. Where are you
Yeah.
at in your week?
Yeah. Um, I think it's interesting. I watched the whole interview with Aaron Sorkin from New York Times, and I took some notes. And I'm debating whether to do a whole video on sort of the analysis of that. Kind of now, it kind of turned out to be nothing. It's like I thought, oh, maybe I'll get some really good, I don't know, some good intel or some good commentary like on what's going on in his mind. And I think that bottom line is he, the way he speaks is it's just it's frazzled. It's not really connected, and it sometimes it gets kind of technical. And in fact, he would jump into technical responses that really wasn't the question, but he would jump into like, well, markets work like this and blah blah blah. you know so he's not, he doesn't feel any that he's done anything wrong, bottom line. And but he knows he made mistakes, and he's sorry, and he's very humble in that respect, and really sorry that people got hurt. And I think it's so interesting because I think he really feels like he can correct it, like he can fix this. In fact, he keeps saying that if they hadn't gone into Chapter 11 bankruptcy, that he would have fixed it, and that he's still trying to, but his hands are tied. He has no access to any of the data, anything, so he can't really do much. So you could tell he was frustrated, like he believed and he wanted to like fix it, but there's nothing he can do. And he finally, towards the end of the interview, kind of said that, like, there's just not much I can do. But because they asked him, what do you see in your future? And he's like, well, I don't know, but I want to see if this can be fixed, and it would make sense to try to fix it instead of just like selling everything for a fire sale. So I thought it was interesting perspective, but there wasn't a lot to it. And I didn't watch the Good Morning America one. That was probably drama or just silly stuff. I don't know. But so where I'm focused is so I went from being angry at everything in crypto, right? Not only just, SBF, but it was like, how did we let this happen? And now we're going to have to work twice as hard to regain, the competency in crypto. And there's such a negative view out there. To now, I'm like, okay, well, let's roll up our sleeves. What can we do about it? What are we going to do? What are we going to do moving forward? What lessons have we learned? And, so kind of like you, like so it's still, everything for me is still wrapped up in it. You almost cannot be consumed by it because it's touching everything still, and it's evolving. And I actually even did watch a little bit of a congressional hearing that they had yesterday, which was cool. You could, they streamed the whole thing, and I didn't watch the whole thing, but again, that's happening. So it's regulations coming hard and fast, and this definitely speeded things up. But I don't know, I mean, again, I think now more than ever we need it. So hopefully they can figure out how to do it with just the centralized exchanges, and shore that up, because this shouldn't happen again. Everyone has egg on their face. They're not going to let it happen again. Something else will happen in crypto. It does, every year or two, something is going to happen. It's still industry in its infancy. I had an interesting thought about this, is that, it's almost like the industry, it's just a big ass experiment. It's just, it's like come up with a new concept or whatever, a new idea, and it's not regulated. You're like, okay, let's try this. It's on the blockchain. Let's try this, or even non-blockchain stuff. I mean, and it works for a year or two, and then it doesn't, and they're like, oh, okay, I guess that wasn't a good idea. Let's not do that again. I mean, all this, and all this institutional money, and this big, what I call now like a gap that was there ready to be exploited, for people to come in and create these crypto banks, really these centralized CeFi entities that were financial people that came in and said, "Oh, let's see if we take all everybody's money and invest it in these high risk things, and they're not regulated. We don't have to tell people what we're doing, and we'll just borrow and leverage everything." And when it was working, they made a ton of money, which just attracted more people to that weird little space in there. And I say it like that. To me, it was this like weird little space where they weren't really crypto completely, not decentralized. They dealt with crypto assets, but they were using traditional financial leverage and loans and margins and derivatives. I mean, all the stuff that they use in traditional finance, but in an unregulated space. So it was like, if you think about it, it was like doomed to fail. It was just too good to be true, for these people. And greed just pushed it over the top. And really, where were these smart people that didn't think that crypto assets could crash just as fast as they could go up? So when Bitcoin was 69, well, they knew that it was probably going to go down again because it had done that in the past. The pattern was that way. So that's what really kind of floors me, is these supposedly really smart people, financial people, that didn't plan for that. Didn't I mean, one of the things that or SBF kept saying was that he didn't plan for the worst case scenario, and that he should have. And he's like, I don't know why I didn't. I was planning for like a 30% drop. And he's like, we could handle that. And he's like, I don't know why I didn't realize or think or plan or have a plan in place that if it could crash, what would we do? And his answer sort of was, in these sort of high financial businesses, these hedge funds and VCs that invest a lot of money in risky, maybe new ventures, they don't think about the downside. They're really only thinking about the upside. And like, should we even get into this? Is it worth it? Is the upside worth us getting into this? And they kind of glance at maybe the downside but they don't look at the real downside. And that was sort of his excuse why all this had happened. I don't know if I buy that necessarily, but there probably is some truth to that. So kind of rambling here, but yeah, I've got some articles that a little bit about, okay, now out of this shakeup, what are some things that I'm thinking about or trying to understand better? Because for me now, and I think a lot of people, it's all about, okay, risk management and what can we do to be as safe as possible and prepare for things like this, because it is crypto, and where can we do some certain things. So that's where I'm at today.
That's an interesting perspective. And I do, I guess, touching on just the one point where you said that Sam Bankman-Fried said, he wasn't really paying attention to the risk. I also heard him say that at one point he kind of felt like he had it made. And I can't remember if that was the Good Morning America one. I think it was, because I just watched that one this morning with George Stephanopoulos. He kind of felt like he was already made, and a little bit in that invincible world, which I think can be a blinder. Maybe at some point you do stop paying attention because you just think you've already made it. And he said he became a lot very lazy when it came to that oversight, and that his focus just wasn't on that oversight. Those were kind of his words as he explained as to what was happening. But then I think that's an interesting point that you brought up. It's like maybe crypto, as it is such in its infancy, isn't right now at this point quite ready for those institutional investors. Like maybe all these experimental things need to work its way out before that. Maybe it's not even quite ready for that regulation, which people are saying, it is regulated. It is regulated by just kind of a basic set of laws, but it's not. There's still more that's going to be implemented. But it's like it just kind of has all hit this point where it's almost like they're not. Like the timing is very weird, because it's like this is all still growing and like experimenting and getting to that point. So I like that perspective. I haven't thought about that, so that's an interesting point.
Well, yeah, and it's kind of interesting because he went on to say that he should have hired somebody to watch all that stuff, and really, because I kept asking him about Alameda Research and like why weren't you more. Because he kept saying, I just didn't know the position. I didn't understand. Whoops, hold on. I didn't understand how oversized their risky position was, and the position in FTX. And he's like, I should have hired somebody, to look at that. And so that also kind of makes me think, yeah, I think that every crypto institution should have somebody that does nothing but that, looks at the risk and tries to, mitigate the risk certainly for customers. And we wanted institutional investors in, right? That's what I kept hearing, especially when I first got into crypto. It's like, oh, we want all the institutional players coming, because then it's like it legitimizes crypto, like we're the real deal now. And two things started to happen. One, then we as in the crypto space became tied to the other markets, because you had all these institutional players coming in, viewing crypto as just a risky asset. So when the economy goes down, inflation goes up, they pull out of risky investments, and they pulled out. Well, that's not what crypto's about. In fact, crypto is the antithesis of that, right? It was created in the 2008 financial crisis to alleviate this kind of thing. And they don't get that, and they don't play by those rules. And so the other thing that I've started to think about is wow, like crypto is really, it's morphed in a lot of different ways since its inception. And again, it's an experiment. And I think that's kind of how these long-term social type experiments, work. It's decades before it finally filters out the bad stuff, and figures out the good stuff. And so you've got not only all the experimentation like in DeFi, we're just trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work in DeFi. And then now you pile on, these CeFi companies that are coming in, and that's really messing it up. And it's almost now I've thought about this too, like, and you made me think of this. It's almost like there's two areas in crypto. There's the decentralized individual investors like you and I, and then there's all this other stuff, all this institutional, high value, millions and billions of dollars. And that's the other thing that really pissed me off. It's like, all of these big wheelers and dealers came in here and took advantage of this space. That's how I see it, and screwed things up. But it took all of us little investors down with it when we really had nothing to do with that. That's not why we even came to crypto. We came in lots of ways because we wanted to have more control over our finances. And in the case of like pure DeFi, where we could earn a decent interest rate, using stable coins basically. And that has put in it, a lot of it all in jeopardy. Now, the cool thing is that in general, it's becoming clear, and I think I said this last week, the difference between DeFi and pure centralization and what this centralized exchanges and these other, banks that are CeFi banks. And that's a good thing. I think even the general public, for the most part, like the mainstream media, is now, some of them are starting to get that. And like I said last week, that there, congressmen, and there's different people that are starting to get that a little bit. And so that might be good, because if they come in they regulate the bad players and the centralized exchanges, it's probably a good thing, right? As long as they don't infringe on DeFi and decentralized finance. So like you said, the centralized exchanges are going to be under scrutiny right now. There's going to be a lot of stuff coming at them. I think I have an article actually that will talk about some of that we can go into. But why don't we dive into your stuff? See what you got.
Perfect. I also have a little bit on one centralized exchange and one hot wallet. So we'll take a look. We'll start with the hot wallet. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Yep, we're good.
Okay, so this article came out last week. MetaMask will start collecting user IP addresses. And I'm going to need your help on this one, Scott, because there's a little bit of technical language that I don't quite understand. So we'll see if you can help me dissect this. Okay, so according to a revised privacy policy agreement published by Consensus on November 23rd, MetaMask will begin collecting users' IP addresses and Ethereum wallet addresses during on-chain transactions. Okay, here we are with the green. This is where I get a little lost. However, Consensus, the wallet's creator, explains that the collection of users' data will only apply if they use MetaMask's default remote procedure call application, Infura. Individuals using their own Ethereum node or a third-party RPC provider with MetaMask are therefore not subject to the newly updated consensus privacy policy. Instead, the terms of the other RPC provider apply.
Yeah, I don't really know what this means. I was thinking, I can take a stab at it, but I'm probably wrong. But one of the things I find interesting in uh, Ethereum type blockchains is this whole validator section. Again, if you think about, and I've talked about it before, you've got the validators that really have a lot of control. After you send your request out of your wallet to make a transaction, before it even hits the blockchain, these validators are picking and choosing, and there's software that figures out how to package it together and then send them on into the blockchain. So there's lots of control and different things happening that we as the users, when we go into our MetaMask and we send out our transaction, we'd assume that it's just going into the blockchain, and lots of stuff happens in between there. So my thought is this might have something to do with that, because there was some talk about they're trying to figure this validator situation out. There's what is that company, SmartBots, that they're trying to Flashbots. They're trying to write software and to try to take out the centralized parts or vectors of these networks, because there are lots of centralized things going on. And they were going to now look into the whole wallet thing, because the wallet situation, again, MetaMask has a lot of control of what they're doing with our data before it hits the blockchain. So this is something like that. I don't really understand the difference of it, but I think what's happening is that there's a lot of stuff goes on that really only the technical people, the code writers and the validators and stuff, kind of really know about. I mean, most of us don't understand that because we're not programmers. We don't see what's happening, and I'll see articles like this, and I'm like, that must be part of that. That part of that we don't really understand. And then for the most cases, it's not like we have to understand this. Like, we'll still be able to just do our transactions like normal, but there is some of this stuff happening. So that's my best guess, kind of what this is. So we'll see. Like I said, I'm not sure it affects us directly, so it'll be interesting to see what the rest of the article says.
And right here, so this one part that says that uses MetaMask's default remote procedure call, I would, just reading that makes me think, or I guess just assume, that would be like a typical transaction. Like if I were to be on there, like I'm not running my own node, right? Or am I? I mean, I'm trying to figure out the whole node thing still.
No, and you're right. You're not, and that was confusing. That's why I'm like, okay, yeah, a remote procedure call is probably just a transaction, right? It's just a way that the programmers call a transaction that gets sent out. And again, what was confusing to me was that Infura, like, well, what is that? Is that, again, is that part of the technology that they call Infura? Again, as the end users, I don't think any of this is going to affect us, but let's see what the rest of the article says.
So according to consensus, information gathered in this manner may be disclosed to affiliates during business deals or to comply with Know Your Customer and anti-money laundering requirements dictated by law enforcement. MetaMask is currently one of the most popular self-custody wallets on the market with more than 21 million monthly active users. The reaction within the crypto community has been mostly negative. For example, Adam Cochran, partner of Cinnamon Ventures, stated, "There's nothing more important than consumer privacy, especially when it comes to your financial data. You have a right to be anonymous. MetaMask has provided a great free service for a long time, but their decision to log IPs and tie it to transactions is unacceptable." At the same time, Hayden Adams, inventor of the Uniswap protocol, responded to inquiries by outlining that the decentralized exchange neither tracks IPs nor allows third-party tools on the platform to do so. Consensus has joined the rank of notable Web3 companies, such as Coinbase, that adopted IP collection partly due to increasingly stringent regulations.
Yeah, is that it?
That's it. Yeah.
Yep. Well, that's again, this is all kind of back office stuff, that is being done to, to what's the word? Again, if we go back to this crypto being an experiment, this is all new stuff that's just being tied in there, thrown in there. And what's interesting is that it's all, or it seems like it's all evolving because of what happens in crypto, like the tornado cash issue and about privacy. Then everybody gets up in arms, and then developers go to work and they start trying to do stuff like this that is either to, improve it or control it or, whatever. So this particular quote from this guy is interesting because the way he says that, MetaMask has provided a free service for a long time, and now they're going to log their IP addresses. It doesn't say why they're going to do this. If the largest DeFi protocol says that this is unacceptable, then I think we got a problem here. So I guess my big takeaway from this is kind of a cluster. It's like you've got the largest decentralized wallet maybe battling against the largest decentralized application here. So maybe more to come on this one. Yeah, I would keep an eye out on this one, Brianna, since you brought it up. You better this could go on. And again, a lot of it though is this back office stuff, which is important to us. It's pretty darn technical. It's the stuff that we don't really have a lot of control over, and it's hard for us to even really understand what's going on if you're not a programmer, and I'm not. So you just wonder. It's like, what should we worry about? What should we, it's like there's so much stuff going on, and this headline looks quite interesting, and it may be, but again, if this is just code behind the scenes, what are we to do as invested, meaning carrying, people in crypto that want to know what's going on, but in reality, can we, unless we're programmers, we're never really going to know what's going on with this stuff. So I don't know. That was kind of rambling, but
I know. I think about that all the time. I'm like, what do I really know about any of this? What's really happening back there and on this blockchain?
Let me ask you, before you go off this, what was it that caught your attention? Because that's one of the interesting things about our show is that, it's really, we kind of come at crypto a little bit differently, different ages, different, perspectives in a way. And that's what's cool is that we bring news that captures our attention. What was it about this article that was interesting to you that you wanted to show?
So what caught my attention here is the know your customer. This is something that happens in centralized exchanges and is really something that people are trying to protect against on DeFi. And then when we come here, when it says this one statement here, according to consensus, information gathered in this manner may be disclosed to affiliates during business deals or to comply with know your customer. So with affiliates and business deals. So that almost tells me that's almost like what my mind automatically goes to with that is just like, how can you be kind of like targeted in some way for a business deal dependent on who you are? Like, is that a way to be able to farm you for any way in a data type situation? I don't know what that could lead to. And then the know your customer requirements dictated by law enforcement. Okay, so, and like, again, I think kind of what we have being talked about from the outside on crypto is that, people will say in the mainstream, or we'll hear regulators or people politically stating that people that are involved in crypto they're money launderers, they're kidnappers, they're all of these things. When in reality, it's like we don't, like many people, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but I know a lot of people who resonate and their message with this. It's not that like there's anything to hide here with knowing your customer. It's that we feel that you should be able to transact in some way, especially leading to like, if we're running pure digital, we should be able to transact some way without it being able to be controlled and just completely monitored. I mean, because I look at it kind of like, if it comes down to it with Bitcoin being like the way to be able to transact or buy anything that isn't going to be like regulated in any way, then I'm going to probably want some Bitcoin. Like, and depending on who's on the other side, got law enforcement, who's the law enforcement and what are we like, if I was up in Canada right now, for example, I'll just use that as an example because it's just crazy up there. It's absolutely crazy right now. There's a lot that they could do requirement-wise dictated by law enforcement. I mean, that could meaning like freezing your assets. So
Yeah.
it just that's a big red flag, and it's unfortunate. And I've heard before in the past from somebody who I know who's really well educated in this whole realm that MetaMask is pretty centralized at this point.
Yeah.
But I haven't dug further into that, and maybe I need to. I use MetaMask.
Well, it's a good point. I'm glad that we covered that a little bit further because that's a really good point I think that you bring up, and it's true. If MetaMask is doing some of these, I like to call them centralized vectors within the decentralized world, it's like, what are we creating here? What are we doing here? I mean, let's just figure it out. Like, pick one. Like, I think most people think that, man, if I'm using MetaMask, I'm using true decentralization, because that's what I use it with. And I equate that in my head. So you're right. After further looking at this, you're right. This is like, what are they doing? And is this just a bait and switch game? They
Right.
get us all in here and then they start collecting our stuff. And so, like I said, I think this is an interesting article and concept to maybe follow through here because and it's kind of like the MEV thing that I kind of locked into, again, which is a lot of centralization built into this stuff. And, as I guess I would consider myself fairly new to crypto because I haven't been in it for 10 years. I've been in it for heavy for 2 years. Gosh, there's so much that I don't know and I don't understand about this, and I came into this like, yeah, I love this decentralized concept. It's like one of my little taglines I like to use is living the decentralized life. And yet there's a lot of weird stuff going on that doesn't seem very decentralized within
Right.
crypto. And we already have this now, to me, and I think to most people becoming more and more obvious, these centralized players, these institutions that are coming into crypto that never were, they didn't really pretend to be decentralized other than to probably the people that don't know anything about crypto. They thought that FTX and Celsius were crypto companies. They're not, right? They're not at all. Now, I
Mm-hmm.
consider MetaMask a total crypto decentralized business and company. So this is a little concerning. So yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
And it's interesting too, because I wonder, this did come out after following the FTX thing. So whether or not that was going to happen or not, hard to say, but we are seeing a little bit. And I'll just go really quick over this next one. It'll be quick and short. But this is just kind of an idea as well, because I'm just keeping my eyes on these centralized exchanges. That's what I've been focusing on. And
Good.
that's
You be
the
our watchdog. You be our watchdog.
And it's funny because I'm not even in them anymore. I have been in Kraken in the past because I did diversify between some centralized exchanges in the past, but I did take everything off of the centralized exchanges and they're stored in self-custody. But crypto exchange Kraken settles with Treasury Department over sanctions violations. And I'm just kind of curious what you think about this. But my point in bringing this article forward is just that I think there's some things happening. They're kind of, the way that I see this article is there are regulators kind of coming in and being like, what can we control right now when it comes to these centralized exchanges and how do we make some progress on their end?
Yeah.
Like, I don't necessarily agree with that progress, but I think they're trying to make things happen and be somewhat in control. And so crypto exchange Kraken is settled with the U.S. Department of the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control over its apparent violations of sanctions against Iran. The cryptocurrency exchange has agreed to remit $362,000+ to settle its potential civil liability and invest an additional $100,000 in certain sanctions compliance controls. I'm not sure what that means, that last statement there.
Yeah.
So basically, the U.S. Department of the Treasury Office of Foreign, the OFAC, announced Monday a settlement with Payward Inc., Kraken, a Delaware incorporated crypto exchange. The announcement states Kraken agreed to remit that 362 plus to settle its potential civil liability for apparent violations of sanctions against Iran. As part of its settlement with OFAC, Kraken, I can't talk today, also has agreed to invest an additional $100,000 in certain sanction compliance controls. According to the Treasury Department, between approximately October 2015 and June of 2019, Kraken processed 826 transactions, totaling approximately $1,680,000 plus on behalf of individuals who appeared to have been located in Iran at the time of the transactions. And the Department of the Treasury detailed, at that time of the apparent violations, Kraken did not implement IP address blocking on transactional activity across its platform. And then it just kind of goes out to say that Kraken did voluntarily self-disclose the apparent violations and cooperated fully. And so it kind of goes on. I won't go too much further, but one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up too is I'm curious what you think, Scott. Like, and this has been talked about, and actually Mark Moss had a really interesting perspective on this, because a lot of people say that these type of regulations are going to push things out of the United States, right? And Kraken it's based in San Francisco. I think they're headquartered in San Francisco. They are a United States run company. They're a centralized exchange. And so they are forced to go along with the sanctions that the United States, that they put on to other countries, basically, which could push people out of the United States. And that's kind of where people have led to with a lot of these regulations coming in, that this will push businesses out and developers out. Mark Moss, if you watch his channel at all, I find his views really interesting and educational. He does touch on the fact, he kind of talks about that, but what he says about pushing things out of the United States is that these regulations are coming in so heavily everywhere. It's not going to just be here. It's kind of like a global regulation kind of coming in. So that would mean going to like a small little like country. I mean, I guess it'd be like, maybe they all will go to El Salvador. I don't know. But it's just it's interesting. But we're seeing the exchanges needing to really go with these regulators, and it's happening a little bit right here, right now. And I don't know if that's due to the fall of FTX, that they're trying to show, look, we're cracking down on this type of thing happening, or anything that could be going wrong against what what they want. But we are seeing some movement and action there. I don't know if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, sure. I think that a lot of this stuff was going on before FTX, because really that's only 2 weeks ago. But there's this renewed emphasis on it. And so they're going to go hard and fast now. And reporters now are probably reporting more on it because, the general public is not happy with the government to let this happen. And so there's a lot of negative views on regulators right now. There really are. They should have caught this, is what a lot of people are thinking. Whether they should have or shouldn't have, I have sort of mixed opinions on that. And I have mixed opinions on this whole article because sometimes I get into crypto like this and I just think, man, I have no clue what's going on. I think I do. And then I'll get a completely different perspective. And this, your perspective is a little different than mine just based on what you're reading. My thought is that, and I don't have this fully fleshed out thought, but it's something to do with, you had FTX that, for all intents and purposes, my view is he wanted to set up shop in the U.S. He, a U.S. citizen, he wanted to set up shop in the U.S. But he knew he really couldn't and do what he wanted, so he had to go overseas. But one of the things that he keeps talking about, and I think it's interesting, he's like, FTX U.S. is solvent. And he kept saying this in the interviews. It's like, I don't understand why they're not opening that up, letting people get their funds out, because that was solvent. There was, he didn't quite say this, but basically the things that they were able to do and did in the international realms, they couldn't do in the US, FTX US. So it's my belief, my hope, I guess, but again, I don't really know the details, is when regulation comes in, it's going to be better for everyone and to regulate the centralized exchanges. And therefore, why is regulation going to push crypto companies overseas when really I think what we all want is a fair and equitable and honorable mechanism to onboard our fiat? So I'm like, I would want to be an exchange in the US and start an exchange in the US because it's the most regulated. It's not going to get away with shenanigans. And, well, we already know about KYC. We already do KYC in the US and a lot of places. I think a lot of countries do. And so and again, I have no problem with KYC. You know what? I'm not, I just want to invest in crypto. Now, just like if I'm investing in the stock market, I have to have my driver's license or whatever, open up an account with an exchange. Um, and I get that. There's two other worlds. There's an unbanked world, and that don't have banking accounts and that maybe can't get that, and that probably does need to be addressed. But um, I think there's a world and a place for highly regulated centralized exchanges, and I think it's a good thing. So, what do you think about that?
So centralized exchanges a little bit different because that's not right, and that's, I mean, as far as regulation goes, I don't know what the regulations are or what they would be when it comes to thinking about the sanctions in Iran. That just frustrates me, and it's not something that whether it be centralized, I guess it's just centralized and that's it. But like for me personally, it's frustrating that people can't have this opportunity and that you can't provide that based on sanctions that are made by, it is the country that you're in. I guess it does make sense. Like, I get it's like how the world works. It doesn't mean that I like the way that it works. If that makes
Okay.
sense.
No, that's fair, and I think that's good to talk about that because the U.S. is the biggest financial market, you know, creator, leader, if you will, right? I mean, we hold the reserve currency, and so there are rules that we play by, and it's our government, and so our government isn't has to, you know, part of regulation has to be also have to play by the rules of the government, which is we don't do business with Iran or supposedly terrorist countries or whatever, right? And so you can't quite have one without the other. You can't really have a regulation that regulates, you know, so that people don't get frauded, but then also let them, you know, you do exchange transactions with countries that we don't like. And again, that's a whole nother topic for debate, right? But you're like you said, that's just the way the world works, and that's the way it is. And so it kind of gets back to this view of crypto, and I'm just having this interesting thought about what I call the utopian vision of Satoshi Nakamoto, of pure decentralization, a pure digital currency that nobody has any control over other than you. And it's a great idea. And I do believe this is why I love the crypto space and I love teaching people about how crypto was created and why it was created. And I love the fact that there was this really awesome, massive in a way, viewpoint of purely decentralized, economy, right? But the reality is to now move into that sort of dream state or thought into the reality. And this is making the sausage of how, what it might look like in 20, 30 years. This is the ugly sausage made. We're making it, we're creating it, and sometimes it's ugly. And, you know, who knows what it'll look like in 30 years. And it's all of our hope that it doesn't look like traditional finance, but will it look like Satoshi Nakamoto's vision? Maybe, maybe not. It's probably going to be some sort of amalgam of both things together. And so now, while we're in the dirty sausage making phase, what do we do? What do we care about? What do we think about? What do we push? What do we like? And it's a great debate, really. I actually, and this is why I think it's cool, because I would venture that you lean on a little bit more on the purely decentralized vision, and you really want to push that. I'm leaning on the other side a little bit. I'm kind of more in the reality of let's figure out how to make this work in the real world with governments and everything right now. And there's no right or wrong answer, and it's going to unfold as everything does. I think watching the internet grow from back before it was adopted and it was nothing to what it is now is a kind of a little bit of a laboratory that we can kind of look at, because it's just been interesting. If you think about, there was a lot of talk about the internet not, being way more regulated, and having government sponsors, and all that in control, right? And what would the internet be if the government sees control over it, or if a few monopolies, um, like AT&T and T and some of the big companies who wanted to control all of the internet? Basically, it would be their internet, and we would just share in it. And that didn't happen. And now the internet, as we know, is this complete ubiquitous. Anybody pretty much can access it, and anybody can pretty much put anything on there. Um, and it's the internet that we know today, that we love and think is just amazing in a lot of ways. Now, Web 2, you can argue, got a little crazy with Facebook and Google controlling our data, and I always think that's also interesting to talk about, because it's almost like we just didn't see it happening. We didn't know what they were doing, and I'm not sure they knew at the beginning, right? Because they were putting everything out there for free, and they're like, well, how the heck are we going to make money? And then all it's like, oh, we got all this user data, maybe we can make money with that. And sure enough, they did. Whether that was their plan all along, I don't know. But it's interesting how that evolved, and now crypto and Web 3, it's going to evolve the same way. A lot of it's luck. Some of it's, bigger guys pushing the little guys around, governments, um, events like black swan events that happen will dictate where things move. I mean, it's just an unknown. And yet, like we always say, Brianna, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else than right here talking about
Right.
this with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's super exciting times to be a part of. And it's so much in its infancy. It's going to transpire. And I'm hoping more than anything that we can keep things in their own place. As far as centralized exchanges, fine. Regulations, fine. But I don't think that centralized exchange founders, CEOs should be making any rules, any compromises when it comes to DeFi. And
Right.
I'm hoping they can stay separated. And maybe they won't, but maybe that's outlandish. But I think my view goes really far. Like it goes into, I always look at what kind of has happened. I kind of try to look at experience. What have I experienced? What have I seen? Mixed with what am I learning information-wise, education, mixed with common sense, and then just kind of putting it together and looking into the future, like where could this lead? And if we end up in a cashless society, which we are just heading there, what is our saving grace then? And that's why I'm just really pushing. I really want Bitcoin to succeed.
Yeah.
Is it outlandish to think so? Maybe. I know I watched something with Jeff Booth, and I love Jeff Booth. If you've seen him at all, he's super interesting. And he was saying that the human race will be basically gone before Bitcoin will succeed. That was his view, and he's a Bitcoin maxi, and I'm just like, damn, Jeff, you really have to say that? Like, and maybe that's just how he feels right now, and maybe it is, but I still think it's worth pushing for, and because it is. It's like, and a lot of people will say, that it's like, are you going to want something to be able to buy that's like potentially, or are you going to want to transact something that's potentially not going to be like under full control, like if it came to that, and that is a dystopian view, but it's possible. And it says, yeah, I would. There might be something I might want. And so I'm going to always have that Bitcoin around, and I'm just hoping that it can stay decentralized. And I think it will for a while. If it doesn't fully succeed. I don't know if I would ever have an economy like fully moving through Bitcoin. I don't know if I see that ever happening. I don't see that happening, actually. No, I don't.
Actually, that's interesting. I'll kind of end this. I would say that it is kind of comforting to think that if this great experiment kind of blows up, and kind of doesn't go the way we think it's going to go, I do think Bitcoin will still be there. I personally think that that's the saving grace, and that maybe, that will always be the saving grace. Like for people that they're like, okay, this didn't go the way I thought it was going to be, this crypto thing, or, whatever. I'm peacing out. I'm just going to Bitcoin, and, that there'll be a market, and that enough people will do that. There'll be this side market maybe, and it'll be Bitcoin, and there'll be transactions, and we'll live off just Bitcoin. and so that kind of sounds dystopian in a way, because that's, I don't know, that's sort of like, it's kind of like, oh gosh, I just thought it's kind of like Ayn Rand, world where basically all, everybody just, all the great thinkers and risk takers and people in business just go away and find an island and move there and have their own little world, because, they didn't want to deal with the rest of the world. Um, might happen. I don't know. Uh, and so I for one am kind of that way too. It's like I I love Bitcoin. I love it because it's where it all started. I love it because it's solid, never been hacked, never been messed with. I love it because it just feels like this robust. It feels like gold, to me, and that can never be destroyed. And maybe it's never going to be anything other than what it is right now, and I'm okay with that. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that. All right, let me share my screen. Let me see what I can get into here. Um, this is an article it talks about centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges, and gives some different viewpoints. This is from Weiss Crypto. This guy had interviewed a couple different people. Um, so he's talking about centralized exchanges and the scrutiny. And here's some interesting things I have. So this guy's interviewing a couple other people. I'm not really going to even try to do their names, but you can kind of see here. So the question is, what is your opinion on the core issue with FTX situation? And this guy, Omar, says, this FTX situation, among other events, shines a light on the critical role of access control in Web3. For years, the access control problem of the decentralized world has been solved by centralized players. And this goes against the basic premise of crypto. You can't trust centralized entities to control your assets. So yeah, this is what we're talking about right now, and recent events prove that. Yep. From Three Arrows Capital through Celsius and now FTX, mighty players are eviscerated. Good word. Overnight, after they broke the trust that was put in them. Crypto needs to be decentralized, and until we stop letting centralized players hold our assets, Web3 will never reach its full potential. See, so this is exactly what we're talking about, and so it's kind of cool because everyone's talking about this. These guys are deep big players in crypto. Centralized solutions give us the flexible and robust access control that makes us sacrifice decentralization. The only way to make Web3 decentralized again is by decentralizing access control. If we don't do that, we'll keep seeing these things happening over and over again. The reason I put this in blue is that, my thought on this is that this is what happened to us, is that we were all enthralled by the vision of decentralized currency and economy. And then again, as the dirty sausage is being made and we figure, okay, how does this really happen? These centralized exchanges come in, and at the beginning, that was a great idea. Oh yeah, let's make it simpler, so we can onboard our fiat, and we start using it for that, and then we get sort of mesmerized by these centralized players that say, hey, don't just onboard with your crypto. Keep your funds on our platform and do all these wonderful things, derivatives and staking and all this other stuff. And whether they had that plan originally to like, let's fool them, let's keep their money there, I guess it just makes sense, because the more assets that we keep there, they can use those. And I don't have a problem, again, of these centralized authorities or entities necessarily using the crypto, but it has to be backed up. There can't be a bank run, So whatever they do with it is fine to make a few pennies here and there. That's what banks do, but it's backed up by the government and other assets, and that won't allow you to have a bank run, because we went through that before, in the early 1900s or 1800s, and that's why the Fed was put in place and all these backstops. So here we are in crypto trying to figure it out. How can we have decentralization and all that brings to us, and yet not get ripped off and not have bank runs, so this is so interesting as you start, if you love history and you see how money and economies have progressed through the years in history, we're kind of redoing it and reliving it. And so we need to learn the lessons, understand that bank runs happen, and be prepared for it. And so centralized entities typically allow us to have easy access and can give us tools and fancy software that makes it easy for us. But that then takes away our freedom. And then we see what happens when our freedom is taken away and they control our assets. They can do whatever they want with them, which isn't good. So we're still trying to create this new version of money, of currency, of economies. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but now back to this. So this Brendan guy says, not necessarily. He says, I appreciate CEXs. They are the key piece of getting people into crypto. Decentralized exchanges, on the other hand, are inherently great for earning public trust. Given that the FTX collapsed, I believe that asset holders will use DEXs while CXs figure out their auditing mechanisms. So I thought I kind of believe that's going to happen. From there, CXs will be used as on and off ramps rather than from holding funds. And we're all in this mode now. I think we all learned that lesson. Right now, most central exchanges are being used to get in and get out, right? And this guy says, yeah, with good reason, since users are now skeptical about holding their funds on exchanges. CEXs will always have a place for traders and speculators to do their business, while DEXs will satisfy swaps and basic trades. I like this concept. I actually agree with this too, that, centralized exchanges, I believe there are mechanisms that people are trying with decentralized, but again, how do you get your fiat currency into crypto? And right now, centralized exchanges do that really well, and it's not that big a deal other than the unbanked issue, and I get that. But for most of us that are in crypto now, we can provide KYC, and we don't have a problem with that. But don't keep your funds on there. DEXs are great. Once we get our funds into crypto, then we need to use DEXs because they provide us with the control and with us personally having control. So he thinks that the two forms of exchanges will live in symbiosis and that they are truly different products. First and foremost, they have different standards for transparency, and nothing's wrong with that. So this is kind of what I was getting at before, Brianna, was that you would have very regulated centralized exchanges. And we're okay with that for the most part because that's all they're used for. And we can't be burned by them because of the regulations. Just like FTX US, because of the regulations, didn't have any problems with this crash necessarily, even though I think they're closed still. But they didn't have any problems. So this guy, Dr. Jiang, says that crypto exchanges are currently scrambling to compile proof of results. No, what is POR? Proof of reserves. And so that's been talked about. Like I think Binance has said, oh, hey, we have proof of reserves now. And by issuing these statements, they would publish their Merkle tree, which is a crypto protocol thing that certifies that you've got the funds in there, and it increases transparency. But it's interesting. He goes on to say a Merkle tree is a cryptographic tool that assures users by enabling the verification of large amounts of data in a single hash that compiles all of the input data. This improves the transparency of exchanges by allowing anyone to view their transacted data. However, this method is flawed because, as stated earlier, the Merkle tree only solves the problem of proving the existence of the account balance. Another problem is verifying that the balance with the addresses that are on chain, because the information of asymmetry between the exchange and the user is difficult to show. The evidence it produces is not forged. I mean, that was actually kind of confusing, but the way I look at it is that what they're saying is the Merkle tree, it only, I've heard it said this way, it only proves that you have balances of assets. It doesn't show what your liabilities are. So you could have a ton more liabilities, loans and leveraged positions that wouldn't get called in which is exactly what happened with FTX. So this wouldn't solve the FTX issue, is basically what this guy is saying. So, I'm glad people are trying, and Binance is making a big deal out of this, but in reality, I don't think this solves the problem, is what this guy's saying, and I tend to agree. What else do they say here? It says the next generations of CEXs must operate using a bring your own wallet model. Oh, this was interesting. In which users self-custody their assets using their own D-wallets, digital wallets, or decentralized wallets that live on a dedicated blockchain utilizing this MPC technology, which I'm not sure they talked about that, but it's I think it's this bring your own wallet model basically. So you're using a centralized exchange, but now instead of not really even having a wallet, when you transfer your fiat into crypto, you have your own wallet. You bring it to them, they just do the transaction, and yet you custody your assets all the time throughout that transaction. So I like this version. We'll see what happens with this, but I think this is a good option if it can work. What else? This guy says, I think CXs are just maturing, and Kraken is leading with solid progressive steps. Kind of like your article said. These exchanges will have different standards than DeFi because they're centralized entities. I also expect them to bear the brunt of incoming regulations, and they should. Still, it's moving in the right direction. It helps to broaden the crypto ecosystem to have users on-ramp via trusted exchanges. So again, CEXs and DEXs are just different standards for each type of product and will likely attract different users to some extent. Both will play important roles in the years to come and will profoundly impact the trajectory of crypto and its mass adoption. In the coming months and years, the growing disappointment towards centralized entities that have failed traders and advancement of wallet technology will push traders to abandon centralized solutions in favor of self-custody, D-wallets, and decentralized access control. So these are two different guys. This first guy that was in blue, he's kind of saying, look, there's going to be a case for both of them, and they're both going to be moving in the future, just different roles that they will play. This guy's like, no, I think that we're going to have to completely have a new technology where there really are no centralized exchanges, or if they are, they're just sort of neutral, and we come at it with our own wallet, and we just use them to transact, but they never really control our assets. So yeah, so that I don't know. Did that make sense? I know that was a lot of stuff there, but it kind of was everything we talked about in this article, right?
Yeah, there was a lot there. And it does point out some things that you can kind of forget. You're like, well, central exchanges, and I'm not against them in any way, but there's a place for them for trading, for traders, and putting in stop losses, which I get around. I moved everything out of there, so I still don't have to put in my stop losses. Haha. No, it's always been a hard thing. But they are a great tool. That's a great tool to have. But yeah, I don't know. The whole D-wallet thing, that's interesting. That's very interesting. Yeah, I like that. I don't know what that would entail. Part of me is like, no, don't take away from what's already happening in DeFi, because they're like, so, there's like Uniswap, and that other one is coming up. What is it, GMX or something along those lines? There's another one. I don't know. There was something that's
there are lots of them. If you're talking about decentralized exchanges, gosh, I think there's new ones coming on like every week.
All interesting.
But what's interesting, I think, about that is that the MetaMask article that you brought up. If MetaMask is turning into this centralized thing or whatever, they're going to take advantage of in somehow and control something with collecting the IP address. I don't know. That article is interesting to see what will evolve from that. But this other sort of D-wallet, may be a better way, because it's really, and again, who knows how that's actually going to work. But if and it could be like a MetaMask wallet, right? That basically just is now used to onboard, crypto. Now I know you can actually buy crypto from MetaMask wallets, I think, right now, from a credit card in certain ways. So, there are ways, I guess, to get around some of it. I don't know. Have you done that? Have you used MetaMask to actually via credit card to actually buy crypto?
I have not. At one point though, I was going through some steps to do so, and it took me to a different website, and I can't remember the name. I should look into this, but it was just like a third-party website, And I just got scared about it and I didn't do it because I ended up just taking it the other route through the centralized exchange. And part of that, I think I was waiting for funds to clear to be able to send them to MetaMask. Sometimes that happens with Coinbase. I always find myself in those positions. I have to like wait 5 days. And so I tried to go through this other route, and I'm going to find out because it's kind of been hovering in the back of my head what that site was. But it did allow you to kind of go through and like just enter your card information and then go through that third party and then bring it through.
Well, what I think that third party was, it's the KYC version. So it's like, you know, they wouldn't be able, I mean, I think that they would have to then do that, you know, some KYC. Now I know other, like, is it Kraken? Or is it KuCoin? One of them is there's sort of a mini KYC that's not as robust as say like Coinbase. And I wonder too if MetaMask. So I think that third party was some form of KYC, which kind of makes sense in a way. So I don't know right now how to get around that sort of KYC thing, especially being in the U.S. But the issue is what does this personalized wallet look like, and could it be used to? I mean, because you think about it, Brianna, the point of it is that we just want to always have control of our funds in our wallet. We never want to put them where they're completely in the custody of some other entity. And if this wallet could do that, and we can still onboard and use it, but we never actually, you know, give custody over, then I think that's good. I just relearned this issue yesterday again with DeFi and in some of the yield farming that I'm doing, because I had forgotten, because I know for a long time I was worried about that. It's like, if I'm using DeFi and I'm using my MetaMask wallet and I put my funds into a liquidity provider and I'm you're earning yield, well, where are those funds? Where really are they on my wallet, or are they on this? Are they in this application? And it was cleared up to me yesterday that the funds, the tokens are actually in your wallet, and there's proof that they're there, but they're in a smart contract. And this is where it's kind of confusing and mind bending in a lot of ways, because you've said, okay, take this amount of my crypto and put it in this smart contract so it can earn interest. But the way that I'm understanding it is that because it's not an entity, it's just a smart contract, it can't go under. You know, no one, it can't, it's not an FTX. It's not an entity that can go bankrupt. Let me put it that way. So your funds are never going to be closed off to you like a centralized exchange can do. But since they're in this smart contract, if the smart contract gets hacked, that's how you can lose your funds. So there is no perfect method here. There is no perfectly safe way to deal in crypto. So the question is, and this is always running through my head, because I've always had this issue, like, well, my Bitcoin is sitting and the Ethereum is sitting here not doing anything. I want it to earn something. And so if you keep it on the centralized exchanges, you can stake it, right? And now you're earning something. And that to me just seemed really smart. And that's why I was so bummed when the whole FTX thing started, because it really took that option away for all of us, you know. Now, there is another option, which is this fractional or liquid staking by smart contracts like Lido and Rocket Pool. And I do use them. I'll use Rocket Pool, and I'm probably going to use Lido. But then you're wrapping your tokens basically and holding them in a ERC20 token. So I have Ethereum and it's simple. It's freaking simple and awesome in a way, because you take your Ethereum and you basically just swap it on Uniswap for RETH. So you take your ETH and you swap it for RETH, and now you're staking. And now your ETH is wrapped in it's an RETH token sitting in the smart contract of Rocket Pool. So if Rocket Pool gets hacked, those assets could be gone. But the cool thing is now the RETH can be traded. So it's just another token. So I can sell it whenever I want, and it stays relatively pegged to ETH. And that's the other thing is, I had a whole nother article that talked about wrapped coins and stuff. We'll have to get into that next time. But it is kind of interesting, because Now I'm looking for, okay, what can I do if I can't keep my funds on an exchange to earn interest? What can I do? And you can move them over to smart contracts. So one way is to wrap them, to stake them in these liquid protocols. But then you run the risk of, yeah, they're in these protocols, but they're still in your MetaMask wallet. And that's what's cool. You have I have the RETH token that is in, and it's worth basically what ETH is, plus a percentage because I'm earning interest on it. So that's a whole bunch of stuff, that's really interesting about that, and it all kind of goes together. So even though it seems like we were kind of bouncing around, really, it all goes together about decentralized exchanges, centralized exchanges, regulation, the FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried, all this stuff goes together. We really, it seems, and I'm going to watch this show back because it seems like we're kind of all over the place, but in reality, everything we're talking about is really all connected.
Right.
So it's way over an hour again. We're almost 15 minutes after, which is so easy to do when we just get going into this stuff. And so we should wrap it up. What would you like to say to kind of wrap up all the crazy stuff we talked about today?
Oh gosh, I don't even know where to start. It's all interconnected. I don't know where to start. If you have any idea what we're talking about, then you probably get it. If you don't, then you're probably like, what?
Know. If you know what we're talking about, let us know.
Just go ahead and comment. We are live every week on Fridays. Scott, I don't know. You're going to be on the beaches of Mexico drinking, I don't know, margaritas, or what are you doing?
We're going to try to have that. Yeah, we're going to have the show. I'm going to be in Mexico. So we'll, as long as I can find some Wi-Fi, and I'll have I'm going there to get away from this winter wonderland for a little bit. But I almost forgot to mention, the good news is that my course is actually out live. So if anybody wants to check this out, it's basically very introductory. I really focus on why and how crypto was created. But then I actually help people invest in Bitcoin. If all this stuff and you just tuned in and you're like, oh my God, what are heck are they talking about? The centralized exchanges and all this stuff. I actually walk people step by step in, going to a centralized exchange, buying some Bitcoin, how to keep it safe in their hot wallet and their cold wallet. And then I do talk a little bit about, well, what's the next step? What can I do? I can now take some of my assets and I can put them in a decentralized exchange and earn interest. And that's what I basically do. And believe it or not, we can take 4 to 6 weeks going over all of that stuff in a lot of detail. But you come out on the other end understanding what crypto is all about if you don't know. And if you're watching this, you probably, already understand most of this, but you may know people that don't have a clue. And, one of the things I found, it was when I went to YouTube to look for this stuff, there was a lot of stuff that doesn't make a sense for the the newbie, the complete newbie. And so that's what this course is all about. And in fact, I came to it because I came to crypto because I wanted to shore up my retirement funds because I hadn't saved enough. And I knew in this economy, I wasn't going to be able to. And so crypto allows us, because we can get good interest rates and we can invest in Bitcoin, which is like digital gold, for the long term. And that's really what I focus on. And there are other areas in crypto that we're both involved in. And eventually I'll have other versions and phases of my training where I get into much more decentralized yield farming. And then the third area is going to be in the metaverse, which I'm exploring now. But right now, the course that's open, and so if you would just go to retirementwithcrypto.com, retirementwithcrypto.com. And right now, I've just opened it up, and I'm looking for students. So if you know anybody, retirementwithcrypto.com. And thanks for tuning in. Thanks, Brianna. I know I rambled a little bit more today than usual, which that's pretty tough to do.
Well, that's incredible, Scott. Congratulations on your course. That's super exciting.
Thank you.
And I can always emphasize enough. The education is so important, and you're a great person to learn it from. So yeah, go check that out. And thank you guys all for being here. We'll see you guys all next week.
All right. Happy holidays. See you next week.